Next comes Bernice Kelty, along with her scrapbooks she let me copy. So inside the first page is a picture of she and I and her watchdog Samson standing in the front driveway here. So that's what she looked like. Once again, she was the great-granddaughter of Amos Harvey. I can't remember how I discovered she existed, but she lived in Dallas in an assisted living place. I drove in and got her a couple of times and brought her out here. And we drove around, walked around, and so I've got two documents, my notes transcribed from her first visit and from her second visit in here.
Did you say that Samson was a bird?
No, a herd guard dog.
Oh.
Guarding her animals. No, she was our dog.
Yeah.
Okay, I just took notes as she talked, and so they're not all in, a cohesive, group. There's one that starts, and then there's one that's titled Bernice Kelty 2. So if you don't have both of those. So there's 2 or 3 things worth looking at in here. That's Bernice and other relatives standing in front of Amos Harvey's grave. All of the Amos Harvey and all of the Keltys and all of the Browns are buried over in the Bethel Cemetery over on the corner, where Xena Road goes around the corner. It's on the outside of the corner. That was also land given for that purpose by Amos Harvey off of this land claim. This next page, there's the obituary of J.D. Kelty, the guy that lived so long in the house there, the farmstead house. Another article on the anniversary of by the Harveys founding the church there. And a lot of pictures of Bernice and her sister, Lucy. But not interest to us. Here's a page on Maureen Brown, Brown Newberger, who was the senator, which we'll talk about in more detail in a second. And a picture of the 2 houses. That's what I'm looking for. And towards the back. Sisters. Here is a picture of this house here, right when it was built in 1914. It's almost black.
So who built this red thing?
Which thing?
A shed.
That was built by Julius Marx.
And it's breaded.
Clyde Kelty, who was the father of Bernice, who built this house, also built the barn that used to stand where your house is.
Right.
And then Julius Marx built the red shed there.
Okay. But that barn was still there when the shed was there, right?
Well, the barn was built well before the shed. Barn was built in probably 1917 or so, and the shed was built in 1950. What?
Well, I saw one picture where they were both still there before they burned down the barn.
Yeah. Well, Phil took the barn down. Now, what year was that? 1988 or something like that. 81 before. Yeah, somewhere. It was getting to be a hazard, I think. On the
Just a little footnote. My dad and my uncle Eric built the shed.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. 2 of you. There's still, when you tour the shed, there's still Ellis and which sibling was it that got your Emmett. Their signatures are in the cement.
Yeah.
On one of the last pages there, this house there was the original homestead house, which was cited over there. This was Amos Harvey's house, and then J.D. Kelty's house. And the only picture of it I've come across. And most of that's labeled. And you can look at
You can
that.
go on
Paper. Bernice told lots of stories, one of which was that after they left here, moved to McMinnville, they came back one summer day, and her father, Clyde Kelty, took her and her sister for a walk up the hills, and they went to an Indian fort, a stone fort. And she just said, I remember it was a very hot day, and we got so thirsty. They went up and saw it, the only time she ever saw it. So since then, I've asked all around and people up on the road up above if they'd ever heard of an Indian fort or seen one, and not one soul has ever said they knew what it was. So I think somebody tore it down, used the rocks to do something else with. But what it would have been, I think, is a lookout to the east, because everybody came through the pass here, friend and foe, and so they probably had somebody up there all the time looking out. And so the Indians had camps here up this draw for sure, and then as you come in, the stream, Chad, that feeds the reservoir down there, if you follow that into the woods onto the north side of the road, that's where Bernice said the Indian encampment was. But she was 96 when I was talking to her, and I don't think her memory was all that good. So it could have been in both draws, actually. But so I think the guy up there in the fort looked out, said, hey, somebody's coming, and they either chose to hide, fly low, put out their fires, or they got out their bows and arrows, depending on who they maybe thought it was. So that was one of her stories. Okay, moving along quickly, we'll come up to the maps. This titled The Senator, this is Maureen Brown Newberger, and she was a fine woman. She was a cousin to Bernice, and we saw her on the tree, family tree. Everything you want to know is in that packet there. Then we have these outlaws, the Marx family. So the Kelties, what did I say, 1877 to 1940. And so J.D. Kelty, I think everything was in order while he was living there. He was, well thought of man, powerful in the family, and everything was organized. When the Kelties, the descendants from there, I don't think they did very well. And when we get to looking at these maps, there's evidence that they were selling off land to generate money, and there wasn't much less. Julius Marx, to his credit, put a lot of it back together. There was 640 acres, and then of course when you guys left there were 300, and so about half of it was back intact. But look at this map and it'll kind of tell that story. So how many of your siblings were alive, Alice, when you guys moved here in 1940? Any?
My siblings?
Yeah.
Well, Ken was born in Amity. The rest of us were born when they lived here. Three of us were born.
All right.
Yeah.
I was
Where did the birth
6 months.
take
I was
place?
6 months old
Just curious.
when you moved here.
I'm sorry?
I was 6 months old when you moved here.
Okay, well that answers that. Are you the oldest?
I am.
Good. Okay, in here there's two things. One is written by Alice on top, history of the Marx property, and a lot of good detail in there. And then the other one was written by me, but I think it was just transcribed from a phone conversation I had with Alice once, just gleaning as much information I could. So my transcription may or may not be very accurate, and it's missing some data, but anyway, I did what I could there. So there's the Marx story. Here's the PO2 story, which is Phil, Mark, his brother, and me, Powell, Olson, and Olson, PO2. And I won't belabor it. You can read about that if you want, but I thought it would finish off our time. But how did we get together and know each other? It was the Vietnam War era. Everybody, Mark, the Navy put him through medical school, and he went off for a 4 or 5 year contract with the Navy. I did the same with the Air Force and went off, and Phil was in the Navy anyway, we were out in the military. But Phil and I were fraternity brothers at Oregon State. And I spent a summer living with his family, summer of '68. And so I really liked this area. And so I was over in Southeast Asia or something, and I was making more money than I was spending. And so I had enough saved that I thought, I wrote him a letter. There was no email in those days. I said, if you see anything about 40 acres, I might be interested in buying it in your area, though. And got a letter back eventually, said, we don't see anything of that size around, but this place for 300 acres is for sale. It looks interesting down the road. And so we determined that none of us could swing it alone, but Phil and his brother Mark and I, three of us, probably could swing something of that mammoth amount of money. And so we ended up buying it for $124,000, and that included all the land, the house, the barn, the shed, and 70 sheep, as I recall. And so that's essentially how we bought it as a partnership.
That was in the 60s?
1973 we closed. So the Marx were here.
Scott, I might just add to what you said is absolutely perfect. It was kind of fun when we did that because Scott, my brother, and I were risky bets at the best, and Julius and Elsie were going to sell it on a contract basis. And so we put a front man in there, and that was my dad. Because my dad had been there for a while, and Julius knew of my dad. I don't think they were really supposed to just, they were good, both good people, but I don't think they knew each other that well. So we put that, so we all knew it was going on. So Dad went in there and did the deal, and then, but he says, sometime you guys got to carry this yourself. So I don't know how many years ago it was thereafter. In the meantime, we got to know Alice and Elsie and all that. And we approached him down there. What do you think? I think we were far enough into the contract that he probably wanted it back anyway. I guess if we defaulted on it. So at that point, we swung it and put it on with a partnership of Scott and my brother. But it was fun working with him. What do you think you'll do it now? Yeah, let's wait another year. So then we carried the contract and we finished it, as Scott mentioned.
I think the three of us put $8,000 down each, and the contract was $5,000 principal a year plus 6.5% on the unpaid balance. So the first year was like $11,500, and it went down a little bit for 20 years until we paid it off in 1993. So there's a little bit of a bio on the three of us, plus just an overview of what we did during the years we owned it. Not much more to go here. The one titled Neighbors is just people that lived around. There's a little bit, this is the packet where the watercolor of the McCoy store is. The Sears family lived across the road. There were some generations of them, and I've got a story about that. It'll be the last long story I tell. But there's something in here on Lincoln, the city of Lincoln, that's disappeared in a flood. And then Louis Lynch used to live over here. As you go around the corner, his house is on the inside. He was a character. I don't think he had a lot of education, but when Phil moved here, he used to come over all the time, and I would see him. They didn't travel much, but I stayed in their house a couple of times for security when they went away. They wanted me to stay there, so I've been there. And what many people don't know is his house was moved from the town of Bethel. It was originally one of the Bethel houses, and Louis told me that himself.
I think Jewel was a teacher either in Amity or Bethel.
Or Bethel.
Yeah, we always knew Julia. Louis was around because we had party line, so we'd be talking to somebody, hear this click. This long period. We didn't hear the second click. Louis, we'll be off in just a second. Oh, okay.
But the three parties were Charlotte Leppin over there, and then Jewel Lynch. Yeah, this house. Party lines. We were one of the last to have one.
I thought we had two.
Phone service was so good.
I think there were 10 on the party line when
Oh,
we were there.
brilliant.
And
Wow.
yeah, you never heard the other seven.
That's what the front of the Sears story and the John Schoon story. So it's written in here, but there was the original homesteader over there, and then the name of the guy, P.C. Sears anyway. Jacob Sears was a patriarch from the east. He came out, but P.C. Sears, they bought 300 acres of the land claim, and the big white house. And
So across
barn.
Xena.
Yeah, it's the barn there, and then behind these trees there's another house. And originally, and so when PC died, it was split 140 acres and 160 acres between two brothers, Tom and Jake, I think. But PC Sears had 12 children, 8 girls and 4 boys.
Whoa.
And the youngest boy was an uncle of Chuck Sears, was 98 years old, and through John Schoon, I tracked him down in Medford, and he had lived quite a bit of his life here and was quite familiar with the Sears story there. But this is an interesting story. So the youngest son, not the youngest child, of this 12-kid clan went to Bethel School and planned that when they graduated from high school, he and somebody called the Shields boy. So Shields is a common farming family name around here. And so they graduated in 1902, and they were going to go off on an adventure without telling anybody. So they ended up going to San Francisco, and not too long after that, the Shields boy came back, but Ernest Sears did not. And so the story was told that not long after they got to San Francisco, some guys tried to grab Ernest, and he got in a fight with them, hit him on the head, knocked him out, and dragged him off and shanghaied him and put him on a British ship that was in port. It was getting ready to sail. They had 11 sailors signed up, and they needed 3 more, so whoever they were paying to bring in people just went and found 3 bodies and brought them out there. And so they sail off, and so at that time, not long after, the father was P.C. Sears, traveled to San Francisco to find out what he could, but really not much to learn other than what the Shields boy told him. And so they waited a while, and after a while, that ship made it to London and made its report. And the report was these 3 Americans, non-British sailors, had mutinied, and they had stolen away with a lifeboat or a dinghy, and they were never seen again. And the mutiny was famous because it was the second largest mutiny to the mutiny on the Bounty in British maritime history. So it was known for people interested in things like that the world over. And so and the most amazing part is the family tracked the ship, which just think how hard that would be in those days with no internet. And it came back 2 or 3 years later. One report says Seattle and the other says Grays Harbor, so somewhere up there. And so one of the older brothers, Tom Sears, traveled up there. And some of the same crew were still on the boat.
Wow.
And so he found them in a local pub, of course, and asked what the heck happened. And what happened was the captain was a mean old British sea captain, and he had these 3 Yankees on board that didn't know anything about working on a ship, and he didn't want to feed them. And so threw them overboard. And so they perished. And so
not a mutiny.
Pardon?
Not a mutiny.
No, it wasn't.
Just a murder.
A murder, yeah. Like throwing
Just
them
a
overboard.
murder.
But there's some indication that the British tried to hide that incident up because they didn't want to deal with it, didn't want an American-British clash over that thing. And so there really was nothing they could do. So fast forward 90 years. John Schoon is living there. He bought that place in 1970. And one of the brothers built the bigger house, and then the one behind the trees was built by the other brother. And so John owned both of them. And so at times the smaller house, he let family members live or he rented it out. So somewhere in the 2000 to 2010 period, he was renting it out to a woman named Kathleen Jackson. He was 40 or so. She had a daughter. Her boyfriend worked in Alaska construction, and she was his bookkeeper. And so that was the deal. But she was trim and athletic. She used to jog around Bethel Road and Xena Road, which is a 3-mile trip. John Schoon also jogged around that once in a while. He was a former Marine and didn't have any fat on him. So both of them would jog by, stop and talk once in a while. But so Kathleen lived there for 10 years or so with her daughter. And one day she was lying in her bed upstairs reading, and this figure drifted through the window and turned and drifted right past her and drifted into the closet behind. And he was a mariner-looking guy. And so that's all. Near that time, her daughter had a sleepover with a friend. The friend got up to go to the bathroom on the second floor in the middle of the night, and there was a man in the hallway, and he stood and looked at her for a while, and then he drifted sideways into the wall. And so they quizzed the guest girl about it. They said he was funny looking, he had strange clothes on, and the more they asked, it was like a rain hat, a mariner rain hat came down further in the back, a rounded hat, and he had like a rain coat on also. And so the question is, do you believe in ghosts? Was the ghost Ernest Sears? So that's the neighborhood ghost story. The last handout is just the Bethel School fire. It was a 2013, and there's 3 newspaper articles in here about the gym burning down. And so, like I say, go as fast as we can, but I've been waiting to hand some of this stuff out for a long time. What is missing from the artifacts? I had a guy about 5 years, in the last couple of years that I was here, do metal detecting around the house and back in the back here and across over that way. And then also down at the original house site, which was down that way over the hill, and the barn. And he found a bunch of stuff, almost enough to fill a table like this. And when he was all done, he showed it to me, and it was good. So I called him to invite him to here, and he knew we were going to have this one day. And he was, oh God, I'd love to get back and show it off. And couldn't find him. Doesn't respond to his phone number nor his email address. And so he just disappeared. So he's not here, which is a disappointment. It would have been interesting. He found just a lot of, horse buckles and that kind of stuff, but nails. But he found a 1955 penny in the front yard. I was going to make sure he gave it to Marx because you guys were living here then. You don't get it. And then the most interesting thing he found was a medallion, a metal medallion, multicolored, that and the metal detector, Marty, I think his name was, researched it, and it was an entrance ticket to an exposition in Portland in 1918.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was a beautiful thing, but the guy, whoever owned it then, was a Celtic that would have been living there then. So that's a disappointment, but everything else pretty much is here. In terms of the mortar and pestle and the rock balls and whatnot, I think that's all there were. There was a bucket full, I know, when I moved in 1998, out in the red shed there, and there might have been more at one time, but anyway, so a lot of it's there. And then everybody's asked about the arrowheads, and so Brian was good enough to bring those today. And then those old rusty parts, there's an old knife and a crank for a tractor starting, or a car or something, that kind of stuff, so take a look. There are snacks back there, and help yourself. Here's the sign-in sheet, just for anybody that wants to be. Alice actually called this meeting by telling us she was coming. And so anybody so I couldn't find one box of stuff. I know I've got more stuff, and I was going to forward that to people that want to know it, or some people we may want to share information. Is all I'm saying. So those that want to sign up to. There was a pen there. I've got a pen here. if you want distribution on that kind of thing.
Scott, do you have any knowledge about the balls? What are those all about?
Whether they're game balls or something else, Phil, I don't know who has a guess. I don't know.
Okay.
I have no knowledge.
Julius used to tell me that those were gaming balls.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Bocce?
Let's see. So we're going to go through the history of the place in the order that this stuff is stacked in your box. And so, first sheet looks like this, and it's really a list. So that we're really just entering the 5th generation of ownership of this property here, since it was settled by white man in 1840. Amos Harvey says he came in 1845. His land claim is 1848, so it took a while to get the paperwork in. But so the Kelties, there was one J.D. Kelty, which we'll discover, John D. He moved in when Amos Harvey died in 1877, and he lived here. Well, he lived here until 1914 when he died. I forgot how many years that is. And then other Kelties lived here for about 30 more years, and we'll talk about that. This map was on top, or all these maps, and we'll get these out in a while and talk about it, but not right now. Then the Marx for 33 years. PO2, Powell, Olson, 3 of us owned it for 48 years. And now we're launching on the Adams, Perlstad, Lytle era. And so we'll see how long those guys go. But it's so you can easily know this many generations of ownership. And there's lots of history, far more than we'll be talking about today. So
how big was this property?
Well, it was a land grant claim, so it was 640 acres to start with. The land grant is...
and that included where this Lytle's vineyard is,
all that.
where Kenny's vineyard is.
And there's a map in here of that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You were looking at it earlier. But it really stretched on to where the Leppin property is now, just to the north of here.
Okay.
And it was pretty much a square, and it was 642 acres. He got 2 extra acres.
Wow.
So the next packet talks about geology, and most Willamette Valley residents know about the Missoula floods 13 to 15,000 years ago. Glacier dams would break over in Washington, Idaho, and Montana even, and flush down what's now the Columbia River and come down the Willamette Valley. So that pretty much shaped the current shape and condition of the valley. But the front page of this, there's a little bit about mollusk fossils. You really have to thank Ken Perlman and Dana for this information. But there's just a brief paragraph there, and it talked about how he found his fossils. And when you tour the red shed across the road there, he's got some of those on display today. And but he put his wells in up at the top of his hill, and that was at the level of about 600 feet above sea level. We're 275 feet above it here, and the road out there is 200 feet. And so when he got drilled down to about 150 feet, looking for water, the drill started spitting up chunks of rock with fossils in them. And so that was about at the 450 foot level. And so probably all throughout here used to be a seabed. And if you went digging at the 450 foot level, you'd probably find them. And so a little bit on that. And then this is kind of a scientific geology statement about where to find fossils in this area. And it in fact identifies this area right here. And it's got pictures and names of the types of mollusks that you can find. The next packet says region history, and it's got one document that goes on for 5 or 6 pages, but it's just somebody's statement of what happened here at different eras. Dan Hooker. He's going to land in Texas.
hill.
2 or 3 miles away.
Yeah.
Chad knows him, Phil knows him, I know him. And, I don't know if he has his family.
What was he flying?
Well, he built this vineyard right here.
Yeah, he was the managing, managed the installation for the owners. So anyway, this starts out 11,000 years ago when people first came to settle it. Then it moves up, and it's kind of environmental or an echo take on things here, but it goes all the way up till 1970 or something. And attached to that in the back, this is just a resource. If you want to know stuff about land in Oregon or the Willamette Valley, this is websites to go to. And so, anyway, that's that. And so the Indians came. And where we sit now, we were occupied all up and down the Willamette Valley, the Kalapuya Indians, spelled with a C, spelled with a K. But we were where the Lucky Mute Band of the Kalapuyas operated. And there's a map on the first page. There's about 4 or 5 documents that talk about the Kalapuyas here. And so you can read that on your own time. But you can see the name. We pretty well retained the name of the Indian bands in county names or other geographic names. So they live on today here. And so that's for you to read. And they weren't, there were some conflicts with the Indians, of course, because the bad white guys came and took their land. But they didn't have horses, they weren't very warlike, and there weren't any fierce battles up here or anything like that. That. We may have to pause for the next section then is titled Amos and Jane Hardy, and they were the first land grant settlers here. He, in one of these documents, says he arrived in 1845. He was born in Pennsylvania to a Quaker family. He grew up, got into his late 20s, 28, fell in love with a 22-year-old lass, and he married her, but she wasn't Quaker, so he got kicked out of the Quaker church. But he remained a very religious man throughout his life, and he in fact was known as a pastor around here. He went to Missouri, and then in 1845 started his wagon train west. He spent a while in Oregon City working for Dr. John McLaughlin, who's a famous Oregon name. He's kind of the first government, the first figure of authority. And then he moved down to Lafayette, which was a bigger, more important town then than it is now. And then he moved down here to Homestead, to Plum Valley. We call it Plum Valley because they found wild plums growing here. He was a horticulturist and a nurseryman by profession, and so he should know what a plum is.
They were related to the Celtics.
Pardon?
They were related to the Celtics.
Keltie.
Yeah.
We'll get there in a minute. Do you know some Kelties?
No, I just realized that. I didn't realize it was the same family.
Yeah. Well, in fact, let me just say a few other things, and I'll hand out some family trees. So, Plum Valley, 640 acres. He married Jane. He married Jane. He was 33 and she was 21, and that was before he even got here. So he was quite an active person and a good citizen. He founded the church in Amity, which was, they called it something, but it was kind of a strict Bible teaching church. He also founded the church and town of Bethel, which is right over here on the corner. There's only one building left, which is the church. But I think when you guys left in 1970, there was 3 or 4 buildings. But the gym burned down, the college was torn down and moved. And
She walked into a nest.
well,
Got some ice.
Yeah,
Chad,
we got lots of ice.
You look
over
like Amos Harvey.
He was 48 years old when he arrived,
Oh my.
and 78 when he died here. He was an Indian agent for a while in Grand Ronde, and then some other town down in the south. He is found in 2 museums. See him a lot in the Polk County Museum down in Rick Riel, 10 miles south or so. And he's also in the State Historical Museum in Portland. So he left his mark. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Like your arrival.
Make sure everyone's awake.
This is Dan Hoker, aviation friend of ours, and he lives a few miles away. Snacks over there. You and the kids help yourself. Artifacts to look at over there, and we just give him the lecture.
Great.
Great. And so there was a land grant guy to the north who was also a pastor, kind of a guy, and Glenn O'Burnett, and he actually partnered with him in giving the land to found the town of Bethel. What else? So anyway, this is a very good short synopsis of Amos Harvey and Jane Harvey. You can read that. This is copies of the pages of a book. This one's called Bethel College. This fellow, John Smith, wrote the first version of this in '41, and then he updated it and copyrighted this in 1953.
Wow.
So he was around. I've never met him. Don't know why he was interested in Bethel. Must have been related to somebody there. But it's an extremely thorough book about Bethel, the town, and then everything else. Amos Harvey and Jane Harvey are the only people that have their pictures in this little booklet. And he's mentioned just a lot, more than a lot. So it's pretty interesting. This is Jane Harvey in her bikini. And Amos is here somewhere. But, there's Amos, stern-looking fellow.
Yeah.
But it's, in this author cites journals of the local area and talks about when marriages occurred, who had what for sale, when people moved into a new house. And Amos Harvey and Jane mention a lot in there, so you can really, it's interesting to me. But the copy machine I used wasn't working very well, so the print's kind of light, but you can read it. And as I was saying, I'm missing one box of this historical stuff. I have the original pamphlet there, and someday I hope to copy it over darker, and maybe on that distribution list you'll get a darker, better copy. If I can get to do that, if I can find that other box. So the next handout is Bethel, entitled, and so it's about 4 or 5 different articles about the town of Bethel, which is just a supplement to that booklet that I just showed you. So the town of Bethel was established in 1855. Bethel means house of God in Hebrew. Makes sense since they were both pastors. And so inside here, there's also one little publication, a couple of pages on Spring Valley Church, which was called Xena Church, which is the one over the hill. You can see it up on the knoll if you go that way to Salem. And it's got some interesting history as well. So this is Bethel and the surrounding area, just more Bethel news. One of the documents that I couldn't find talks about almost the first encounter of an organized group coming through here, and it was a group of 12 to 15 mounted U.S. Army cavalry people that were on a mission to explore the area, and they came down from Oregon City after coming the Oregon Trail, and down the east side of the river, and then crossed over and made their way down here, and they encountered an American gentleman living over there. He was living in a sod house with Indian wife, and they rode up, and it was such an occasion that these 15 Yanks from back east had stumbled up on him that he, the document said he butchered one of his beeves, spelled B-E-E-V-E-S, and so they cooked that and had a barbecue that night and fed everybody, and then they kept on riding down to California. Whatever the report that those guys were probably supposed to write probably exists somewhere, but I've never encountered it. But anyway, more about Bethel and the surrounding area. So let's look at the family tree. In a minute, we'll look at Bernice Kelty, who was a great-granddaughter of Amos Harvey. And she's been on this property a couple of times. Well, she was born here. But, well, there's not enough for everybody, but you guys can share.
I think you got a delivery, Ken.
So,
No, it's okay. I'll deal with it.
I think it's on your porch.
Yeah. It's probably Amazon.
This is out of Bernice's scrapbook, and we'll look at that again in just a few minutes. But this is Amos Harvey tree up to a certain point. The people in the bottom are around and still alive, although I've never sought to track any of them down. But we can see who Bernice is here. Up at the top, handwritten, is Amos Harvey and his wife Jane, and they had two daughters, Sarah and Jane also. And John D. Kelty married Sarah Harvey first, who was the daughter of Amos Harvey, and she died fairly soon thereafter. They did have some kids before that, though. And so then John D. Kelty, as was so common, married Sarah's sister, Jane Harvey. And so they had more kids. And so they were the first generation after. So there's a picture in Bernice's scrapbook of the original homestead house down that way, no longer standing. Thanks to the Marx family who tore it down. And so below John and Jane, there's Clyde Kelty is one of the kids in the middle right, and his wife Bertha, and they were the parents of Bernice Kelty. Clyde built this house here in 1914, and I've in other places, once again, that I couldn't find, but in the scrapbook, I've got pictures of Bernice in the arms of her mother in 1914 on the porch right there.
Wow.
But in the scrapbook, there are pictures of Bernice and her sister sitting on the porch there, and you can see the house, what it looked like originally. So other people of note on the second line after John D. Kelty, one of his sons was Oscar Kelty on the far left, and he was the murderer. And then on the same row, a cousin of Bernice's was Maureen Brown, who was also Maureen Newberger, who was the first woman elected to be senator in Oregon. So every time, Bernice was here twice, and I printed all of my notes from her visits, but I would want to talk about the murder, and she would want to direct me back to the center.
is this the senator that lives right here? What's the really big barn right back there?
There's a senator living there, or was?
Wasn't there a senator? Isn't that
It was John Schoon, I think you're talking about.
not a senator?
He lived in the, closer to you, right across the road. That it used to be white, now it's gray, square house there. There's a picture of that house. He was a state rep for a number of years.
State rep.
John
Oh,
Schoon.
okay.
And he's still alive, living in the Capitol Manor in Salem. He
Yeah.
sold out about year 2000.
So it's not that big, huge, like multi-story White House. That's not
Well,
him. I thought that was the. Where do you run?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it is right over the airplane. That's his barn.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So it is. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I was pointing wrong.
Yeah.
My mistake.
John's land bordered us.
Okay.
It has like 65 acres. I don't know how big that piece was, but the other house where his son is now borders our land. I think there's 65 acres that run up to that.
Very well. Okay, let's do. So you got sort of a orientation on the family tree as it progressed, and who Bernice Kelty was. And so that brings us to Oscar Kelty. It's this page here. Like I say, there's things I couldn't find. I've got two better. This is one account of the murder. A lot of the accounts don't agree with each other. Details differ. But the best ones I like are, there was a reporter sent out from Salem, and he wrote the stories of the murder in 2 articles. And it's not just the facts of the story, but it's the melodramatic style of writing and that he used that makes it so good in my mind. This is a transcript of a version of it. And like I said, I've got better stuff somewhere else. I just couldn't find it. But essentially, Oscar Kelty was a grandson of Amos Harvey and lived in the area when he was 28, I think. No, 28 when he died. So when he was 25, he married an 18-year-old girl that lived, Clara Glandon. The Glandon family was a successful farming family in the area. And they were married in 1884, and they had 2 sons by the time of the incident. One was 22 months old, and the other was 9 months old. And so it came to pass that Clara left Oscar because he was abusing her. And there's talk of kicking her and beating her. Essentially, he, by the writing, didn't drink much or often, but when he did, he just turned into a belligerent, angry, nasty man. And so he did that once too often to her, and so she moved out back into her parents' home. In some of the documents, it says it's a mile south of the McCoy store, and some it says it's a mile north. So that's just an example of the way the stories don't match. But it was within a mile of the McCoy store in some direction. And so not too many days passed, a week or so, and Oscar got himself liquored up again, obviously, and he rode to the McCoy store. There's a watercolor of the McCoy store in your packet here. It's torn down now, no longer exists, but I've got a picture somewhere of Phil and I having a cold beer after a day of handling hay, sitting on the front steps of the McCoy store about 50 years ago. So he had a trunk in the McCoy store, and he asked to have access to it. And he had to call the owner out, especially, I presume probably lived either in the store or right next to it. And so he let him have the trunk. And out of the trunk, he got his gun and some ammunition. And he went outside to put a bullet in it and fired it to make sure it worked. And he said, "Thank you very much," and he rode off. And he rode a mile to his father-in-law's house. And so he knocked loudly on the front door, 9 o'clock at night. So in June, it was still light here. And so one account says Clara's sister answered the door. Another account said a man answered the door, but he asked for Clara. And so they said okay, and they invited him into the parlor and left the room. Clara came down holding her baby. And so they didn't talk long. He said, "Will you come back to me and live with me?" And she said, "No, I won't." He said, "Okay then." He took out his pistol and he shot her right in the parlor. And the bullet grazed the baby's head and went into her head. And, I don't know, and then it kind of came out her chest after that or something. So different descriptions once again. But she just fell down right there and died right on the spot. People came from other parts of the house, but Oscar was out the door, and he rode away and escaped. And so the next day, as they did in that era, they got a posse together and they went looking. There's different accounts of what happens after that too. The one that I like, and John Schoon, who used to live across the street, told me that they searched some of the most logical places, and they found him hiding in the barn that used to be right down there by the big walnut tree. And so he was caught and carted off to the county jail, which was in Dallas, and right next to the old courthouse, which still stands, and put in jail. And he stayed there for a few days. It didn't get much action, so they had to hire up a special employee to watch him, and at least during the night. And so one night, 4 or 5 days later, they heard the noise of a lot of people riding closer and forth. And so Oscar said to the jailer, "Here they are." And he asked the jailer for the glass top to the what do you call it? A little light in there, glow of a lantern or whatever.
Oil lamp.
Something like that. And so he wanted to, he obviously wanted to beat up the masses to either slicing his wrist or sliding his throat. But the guy wouldn't give him the glass. And so eventually the mob showed up, and they had to pry some windows and doors open. But eventually they had access to the upper floor where he was. And so didn't take long. They were all masked, and didn't take long for them to get him out of the cell. Took him down. There was a big tree in the front yard of the courthouse. They strung him up and killed him there about 2 a.m. on that June day. So that was the end of Amos, of Oscar Kelty. And so that's the story. Let's see, anything else for that? Nothing's coming to mind. So that's what makes the Celtic.
Ken, how
Whose
did you
room
fit
is
up
this?
there?
How did I get up there?
Yeah, oh, you are.
Come straight from there.
Yeah. You just said fit. How did you fit? You probably had to duck, right, at your full height?
Almost, not quite.
Can we go up there?
I don't know. Maybe ask them.
When my folks moved in, there was no upstairs like this. It was an attic. And right here was just a door with a ladder up to the attic. But when the folks remodeled, they put the stairs in and then put the 2 bedrooms.
Oh, and that was when you were here?
Yeah.
Your parents, just for more living room. I know, where'd your mom go? I wanted to hear what it used to look like. Oh, there she is. Yeah. Didn't Grandpa add like 4 feet, or maybe this much?
Mine and the dad
This was all porch.
Right.
And they brought the living room.
Yeah, you'll see in the picture. Oh,
And there's the lost
careful of the bird carcass everywhere.
So whose room was this?
That was the master.
Oh, okay.
We're living high on the hog these days, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, our bathroom's that big.
Wow.
Oh, wow. It already had all the
Yeah, none of that was here. I don't know if you probably remember had a weird, like, going into the porch was like right here. I don't know if you remember that.
So what was this area here? I can't remember.
This little area was a storage room off. You walked out.
Oh, like a pantry?
Is this the kitchen?
Yeah, this was
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And did this went through?
In here.
I know.
So this always went to the garage in here?
Yeah, but it wasn't. They built this.
Yeah.
Garage level.
Before they remodeled, there was no garage.
This is a pretty.
And so there
We would be out
was
here
just a
already.
washroom.
Okay.
I kind of forgot how it was all.
Yeah, the washer and dryer.
Yeah,
but it was all the level of the garage.
Really good neighbors and where we live, I mean,
We've got a few neighbors here and there, but.
Whose room was this?
This is this bedroom that I guess Kathy used when I was living there.
Okay.
And Emmett and I slept upstairs, and I guess Alice slept in the other bedroom upstairs. I can't remember.
Okay.
Oh. And then this would be like a window that.
Post this video, but I want to capture just some thoughts from you. So like what are your like top 2 or 3 favorite memories of this place?
Oh gosh, we have to think about that.
Yeah, the contractor.
I guess summers, and we slept out in the front yard. We had an old bed spring that we sat on the ground and I think put mattress or something on top of that, and did that. And,
I did have to take up the basement.
Gosh, what else?
And the remediation.
Oh, playing with the cousins.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had lots of cousins. Spent a lot of time with them, especially Freddie was one of my pals, and Emmett spent a lot of time with Richard and Ron.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They had motor scooters.
Yeah, we did have.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I remember, in the front yard there was only one tree, and it was a giant maple tree. And we had a swing tied onto one of the limbs, and that's kind of one of the earliest things I can remember doing, swinging in that swing when I was a little kid.
No, great.
We had a weeping willow too, and they had one of those glider. What do you call those gliders?
Swing?
I guess you can. Glider bench.
Oh.
You remember that?
I remember having a bench there.
The padded seat bench.
Oh yeah.
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 Oh great. How about things you didn't like? What were some of the things where like, was it the work?
Weeding the garden back here.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess one of the things that I felt that when I was a kid I missed was having good friends close by.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the kids in town, they could walk down the block and there'd be one of their friends. But and now, and it really didn't take this long for me to realize that it was still a wonderful place to live.
Yeah.
My closest friend was half a mile away, so that wasn't too bad. But yeah.
Okay.
Isolation.
Yeah.
Especially in the summer when you're not in school. But then we were all picking berries and beans and stuff. Also,
had a lot of summer work to do. Kept you guys busy.
Lots of work. Yes. But one thing I remember, I don't know if you remember, but there was a pond down here where this culvert dumped out, and we had inner tubes when we would float around in the inner tube in that pond.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
One thing, this goes back a few years, probably to when I was about 5 years old. This was before the shed was built, and there was a big swale where the creek ran through, and at the end of it was what we call the deep hole. It was a really deep puddle at the end of that particular spot, and so I don't know how I managed to get started doing this, but I tied a string onto a stick and tied just a bare common pin, bent common pin with a little bait on it to, well actually I don't think you can put bait on it, I think it was just a bare common pin, and I stuck it in there and was fishing, see, and by golly something was pulling on it. And I pulled it up and then it would come off. And I'd wait and I'd try again and I'd pull it up and it'd come off. And so I ran in and told the folks that I was catching a fish. And so they came out and looked, and we finally coaxed the thing up close to the top, and it was a turtle.
Is that right? Wow.
The only turtle I've ever seen in this creek.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! I thought you were going to say it was a piece of furniture.
No, it was live.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, that's great.
I wonder where it went then.
I have no idea.
I always wanted a horse. We never got a horse because they were not productive.
Oh, gee.
I have to admit the experience that I had with the horse was one that England had.
Yeah.
And I was scared to death.
Yeah.
I was on that thing, so I didn't hanker much for a horse.
I had to ride behind the saddle with our cousin Jody, and that wasn't much fun, especially going downhill, and I would sit in the saddle. And I didn't like the sheep. We'd have to herd the sheep here and there, and they didn't like to be herded, and one would always get loose, and then we'd be in trouble. And one time we were trying to get them into or out of the barn, I forget which, and one of them turned around and ran right at me and jumped on me and knocked me down.
Oh, no.
I was probably about 8, you know. And
watch out, there's a bee on you.
Sicky's out
Just
now.
move a little bit. Yeah, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I never liked sheep after that.
Oh, that's great. Okay.